The research ship Stellar Dawn moved quietly through space, its silver hull reflecting the distant light of stars. Inside the ship, different alien species worked together on their mission to study strange star systems. The ship was part of a joint project between Earth and the Galactic Cooperative, proving that humans could work alongside other intelligent species. Jake Morrison sat at his workstation in the engineering section, checking the ship's power systems. He was 28 years old with brown hair and steady hands that came from years of fixing broken machines. Jake had grown up in Colorado, where he learned to repair farm equipment and mining gear before joining Earth's space program. He was millions of miles from home, working with aliens he had only dreamed about as a child. His workstation was next to Zixara, a female from the Velthari species. Her skin looked like living crystal, changing colors as she worked with the ship's energy systems. The Velthari were known throughout the galaxy for their natural ability to sense and control different types of energy. Zixara was the ship's main systems analyst. She could detect problems with the ship's power grid just by touching the control panels. On Jake's other side sat Kashinda, a small female from the Nixian species. She was barely 4 feet tall. With large eyes and delicate fingers that could work with the tiniest electronic parts, the Nixian people were famous for their precise technical work, but they were also very careful about safety. Kashinda always followed every safety rule exactly, which sometimes made her work slower than Jake's more relaxed approach. The 3 engineers had been working together for 6 months. They had developed a good friendship despite their different backgrounds. Jake had learned that Zixara's people came from a world with very low radiation levels. While Kashinda's species evolved on a planet with a strong magnetic field that protected them from most dangers, today they were studying a neutron star system in the Vega sector. Neutron stars were among the most dangerous objects in space. With gravity so strong it could crush a person instantly in radiation that could kill most life forms. But they were also fascinating to scientists because they showed how matter behaved under extreme conditions. Captain Velmoth, an experienced Altarian with gray skin and 4 arms, was leading the mission from the bridge. The Altarians were one of the oldest species in the Galactic Cooperative, and they were known for their calm leadership and careful decision-making. Captain Velmoth had been exploring space for over 40 years, and he treated his mixed crew with respect and patience. Jake was running a diagnostic on the deflector array when the ship's alarms suddenly started ringing. The main lights dimmed, and emergency lighting came on, casting red shadows throughout the engineering section. The deflector array was the ship's main defense against radiation and small debris. It was crucial for survival in dangerous areas like neutron star systems. "What happened?" Zixara asked, her crystalline skin now glowing bright orange with concern. She placed her hands on her control panel, and Jake could see her body tense as she felt the ship's energy systems fluctuating wildly. Kashinda's large eyes grew even wider as she checked her instruments. "The deflector array just went offline," she said in her soft voice. "All primary systems are showing failure warnings." Jake's fingers flew over his keyboard as he tried to understand what was happening. His human training had taught him to stay calm during emergencies, even when alien technology was involved. "I'm seeing massive power surges throughout the main grid," he reported. "Something hit us hard." The ship's communication system crackled to life. "All senior staff to the bridge." Immediately, Captain Velmoth's voice announced, "We have a critical situation." Jake, Zixara, and Kashinda hurried through the ship's corridors to the bridge. Other crew members were also rushing to their emergency stations. Jake noticed that many of the aliens looked frightened, which was unusual for species that had been exploring space for centuries. The bridge was filled with activity as crew members worked at their stations. Captain Velmoth stood in the center, his 4 arms moving as he coordinated the response to the crisis. The main screen showed the neutron star they had been studying, a tiny dense object that pulsed with deadly energy. "Report," the captain ordered as the senior staff gathered around him. Nick's single quotes, OL, the ship's chief engineer, stepped forward. He was also a Velthari like Zixara, but older and more experienced. His crystalline skin was dark blue with worry. "Captain, we were struck by an unexpected burst of exotic radiation from the neutron star." Our deflector array has suffered complete failure. The protective shields are down, and we're now exposed to the full radiation environment. Captain's expression remained calm, but Jake could see tension in his posture. How long do we have? Without the deflector array, the radiation will gradually damage all our systems, Nick Solon explained. But there's worse news. The same radiation burst damaged our jump drive. We cannot leave this system. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Jake looked around at his alien colleagues and saw something he had never seen before. Fear. Real deep fear that seemed to grip every non-human on the ship. Dr. Hexandra, the ship's medical officer, spoke up. Captain, the radiation levels are already rising inside the ship. Most species can only survive a few hours in this environment before cellular damage becomes irreversible. Zixara moved closer to Jake, her skin now showing swirls of worried colors. Jake, your people have more resistance to radiation than most species, but even humans cannot survive long in a neutron star's radiation field. Captain Velmoth called up a holographic display showing their situation. The stellar Dawn was trapped in orbit around the neutron star, with no way to escape and no protection from the deadly radiation. Options? He asked Nix, consulted his tablet. Standard procedure. Requires immediate evacuation to the emergency pods. We can deploy them and wait for rescue. How long until rescue arrives? The captain asked. The nearest ship is the transport vessel Golden Wing. They could reach us in approximately 3 weeks. Kashinda's small voice spoke up. Captain, the emergency pods only have life support for 10 days. Even if we reduce power to extend the time, we would not survive until rescue. Jake felt a chill run down his spine as he realized what this meant. The math was simple and brutal. They would die before help could arrive. He looked around at his friends and colleagues, seeing the same terrible understanding in their faces. Captain. Velmoth stood quietly for a moment, considering their options. Can the deflector array be repaired? Nick Solon shook his head sadly. Not under these conditions, Captain. The array is located on the ship's outer hull. Any attempt to repair it would require working directly in the neutron star's radiation field. No known species can survive that level of exposure long enough to complete the repairs. The bridge fell silent again. Jake could hear the quiet hum of the ship's remaining systems and the soft breathing of his frightened colleagues. Seemed to be accepting that their situation was hopeless. But Jake's mind was working differently. He had grown up hearing stories about humans who had survived impossible situations through creativity and determination. His grandfather had been a miner who survived cave-ins and explosions. His father had been a mechanic who fixed machines that others said were beyond repair. Throughout human history, people had found ways to survive when the odds seemed impossible. Jake studied the technical readouts on his tablet, looking at the deflector array's design and the extent of the damage. While his alien friends saw certain death, he began to see an engineering problem. Difficult problem, but still just a problem that needed solving. Captain, Jake said quietly, his voice cutting through the worried murmurs of the crew. I think I might have an idea. All eyes on the bridge turned to Jake Morrison as he stood quietly with his tablet in hand. The young human engineer looked calm despite the desperate situation, which surprised many of his alien colleagues. Around him, crew members from different species showed clear signs of stress and fear. But Jake seemed to be thinking rather than panicking. Captain Velmoth stepped closer to Jake, his forearms folded as he waited to hear the human's idea. What do you have in mind, Engineer Morrison? Looked at the holographic display showing the damaged deflector array. The complex piece of equipment was mounted on the ship's outer hull, directly exposed to the neutron star's deadly radiation field. I've been studying the damage reports and the array's technical specifications. The main problem is with the focusing crystals in the power coupling units. If someone could get outside and manually realign the crystals, then replace the damaged couplings, the array should work again. Nick Solon, the chief engineer, made a sound that might have been laughter. If it weren't so bitter, Jake. You are suggesting that someone perform a spacewalk in a radiation environment that would kill most organic life within minutes. Even our best protective suits would only provide limited protection. How limited? Jake asked, his voice steady and curious rather than worried. Zixara accessed her computer and ran some quick calculations. Her crystalline skin shifted to worried orange colors as she worked. Even with our most advanced environmental suits, the radiation exposure would be lethal for my species within 3 to 4 minutes. The Nixian suits might last 5 minutes before the radiation overwhelmed their systems. Kashinda nodded sadly, her large eyes reflecting the bridge's emergency lighting. My people have never developed radiation-resistant technology because our homeworld has such strong natural protection. We simply never needed it. Jake continued studying the technical data, making notes on his tablet. What about humans? Long could a human survive out there? Dr. Hexandra, the ship's medical officer, consulted her records. Humans have significantly better radiation resistance than most species. But even so, the exposure levels near the deflector array would cause severe cellular damage. You might survive 10 to 15 minutes, but the long-term effects would likely be fatal. How long would the repair actually take? Jake asked, looking at the engineering specifications. Nick Solon pulled up detailed schematics of the deflector array. To properly realign the focusing crystals and replace all the damaged power couplings would require approximately 40 to 45 minutes of work. The crystals must be precisely positioned, and the coupling units require careful installation. To prevent power feedback, Captain Velmuth shook his head. Even if a human could survive longer than other species, 45 minutes of exposure would be a death sentence. Jake continued reading through the technical manuals, his expression thoughtful. What if we could modify a standard environmental suit, add extra shielding, maybe use materials from other ship systems? The alien crew members looked at each other with expressions of disbelief. Zixara spoke first, her voice gentle but firm. Jake, I understand that humans are known for taking risks, but this would be suicide. No amount of modification could make a suit safe enough for that level of radiation exposure. Actually, Jake said, setting down his tablet and looking around at his colleagues, I think you might be underestimating human biology. Our species evolved on what galactic science classifies as a death world. Earth has higher radiation levels than most civilized planets. Kashinda tilted her head curiously. What do you mean? Moved to the main display and called up information about Earth's environment. Our planet has a relatively weak magnetic field compared to most worlds that developed intelligent life. We also have a thin ozone layer that allows more cosmic radiation to reach the surface. Throughout human evolution, we were constantly exposed to solar flares, cosmic rays, and natural radioactive materials. The images on the screen showed Earth's radiation environment compared to other homeworlds in the Galactic Cooperative. Yet, difference was dramatic. Earth's natural radiation levels were several times higher than planets like Velthor or Nixia. This constant exposure forced human biology to develop remarkable resistance and repair mechanisms, Jake continued. Our cells can actually repair radiation damage while it's happening. We also have redundant DNA repair systems and enhanced immune responses to cellular damage. Dr. Hexandra looked fascinated and concerned at the same time. Even so, Jake, the radiation levels near that neutron star are beyond anything your species would have encountered naturally, maybe, Jake admitted. But humans have another advantage. We've learned to work in dangerous environments throughout our history. We've built machines to help us survive in places that should kill us. Jake pulled up files from Earth's databases, showing his colleagues examples of human engineering in extreme environments. Humans have worked in deep ocean trenches with crushing pressure, in the vacuum of space, and even in areas contaminated by nuclear accidents. We always find ways to adapt our equipment and techniques to survive. Zixara studied the information with growing amazement. Your people actually worked inside damaged nuclear reactors after accidents. Yes, Jake said simply. When the Chernobyl reactor exploded, human engineers went inside the contaminated area to prevent an even worse disaster. Many of them knew the radiation exposure would make them sick, but they did it anyway because it was necessary. Captain Velmuth had been listening carefully to the discussion. What exactly are you proposing, Engineer Morrison? Jake called up technical specifications for the ship's environmental suits and fabrication systems. I want to modify a standard suit using materials from non-essential ship systems. We can harvest additional shielding from backup power conduits and unused equipment. Ship's fabrication bay can create custom components to maximize protection. He continued explaining his plan, his voice growing more confident as he worked through the details. The key is to focus the shielding on the most critical areas, the torso where vital organs are located, the helmet to protect the brain. I can accept higher radiation exposure to my arms and legs if it means getting the job done. Nick Solon looked skeptical. Even with modifications, the suit would only provide limited additional protection. You would still be exposed to lethal levels of radiation. But maybe not immediately lethal, Jake replied. Human cellular repair mechanisms work fast. If I can complete the repairs before the damage becomes overwhelming, my body might be able to heal itself. Kashinda spoke up, her voice small but determined. If we're going to try this, we need to optimize every aspect of the plan. I can help design the suit modifications using Nixian precision engineering techniques. Zixara nodded, her skin showing swirls of orange and blue, worry mixed with determination. And I can help optimize the power systems to give you the best possible protection. My people's energy sense might help identify weak points in the shielding. Dr. Hexandra stepped forward. I'll need to monitor your vital signs throughout the procedure and prepare medical treatments for radiation exposure. There are some experimental drugs that might help your cellular repair systems work more efficiently. Jake felt a warm feeling in his chest as he realized his alien friends were willing to help him attempt something they considered incredibly dangerous. Thank you, all of you, but I want everyone to understand this is my choice. Humans have a saying, sometimes you have to risk dying to avoid certain death. Captain Velmuth studied Jake's face for a long moment, seeing the determination and calm resolve that marked him as distinctly human. The plan has merit, but it's extremely dangerous. Are you certain you want to attempt this? Captain, Jake said. Back on Earth, my grandfather worked in coal mines that could collapse at any moment. My father repaired oil rigs during storms in the ocean. Humans have always done dangerous jobs because someone had to do them. This is just another dangerous job that needs doing. The captain nodded slowly. It's very well, but we do this properly. No unnecessary risks beyond the ones we must take. How long do you need to prepare? Jake looked at Zixara and Kashinda. With their help, I think we can have a modified suit ready in about 6 hours. That should give us time to plan every detail of the repair procedure. Then let's get to work, the captain ordered. All available personnel will assist with this project. We have one chance to get this right. As the bridge crew dispersed to begin preparations, Jake noticed something in the way his alien colleagues looked at him. There was still worry and concern. But now there was also something else. Respect and admiration for his willingness to risk everything to save them all. For the first time since joining the mixed crew, Jake truly felt like he belonged among the stars. The ship's fabrication bay buzzed with activity as Jake Morrison and his alien colleagues worked to modify his environmental suit. The large room was filled with machines that could create almost any component needed for ship repairs. And now, they were being used for a purpose their designers never imagined, preparing a human to survive in one of the most dangerous environments in the galaxy. Jake stood on a platform in the center of the room, wearing a standard environmental suit. While Zixara and Kashinda took detailed measurements, the Voltheri female's crystalline skin glowed with concentration as she used her natural energy sense to map the suit's power distribution systems. Her people could actually see energy flowing through circuits and cables, which made her invaluable for optimizing the suit's protection. The current shielding is adequate for normal space operations, Zixara explained, her hands moving over the suit's surface. But it was never designed for neutron star radiation levels. We need to add at least 3 more layers of protection around your vital organs. Kashinda worked with her usual precision, using tiny instruments to measure every part of the suit. Despite her small size, she was incredibly strong for her species, and her delicate fingers could work with components that would be impossible for larger beings to handle. The helmet's radiation shielding is the weakest point, she observed. Your brain must be protected above all else. Jake nodded, watching his friends work with tools and techniques he was still learning to understand. On Earth, we have a saying: use what you have to get what you need. What materials can we harvest from the ship without compromising essential systems? Nick Solon, the chief engineer, consulted his tablet. We can remove shielding from the backup power conduits in sections 7 and 12. Those systems are not currently needed for ship operations. We also have unused components from the secondary communications array. What about the emergency equipment storage? Jake suggested. There might be materials there that we could adapt. Doctor? Hexandra entered the fabrication bay carrying a medical case. I've been researching human cellular repair mechanisms, she said, her voice showing both fascination and concern. Your species has remarkable recovery abilities, but I've prepared some treatments that might help your body handle the radiation damage. Jake stepped down from the platform and looked at the medical equipment. What kind of treatments? Cellular. Regeneration boosters and DNA repair accelerators, the doctor explained. They're experimental drugs that we've never used on humans before, but the theory suggests they could enhance your natural healing abilities. However, there are risks. We don't know how human biology will react to these compounds. Are the risks worse than 40 minutes of neutron star radiation? Jake asked with a slight smile. Dr. Hexandra considered this for a moment. Probably not. But Jake, even with all our modifications and treatments, you need to understand that this mission will likely cause permanent damage to your body. You may develop health problems that will affect you for the rest of your life. Jake was quiet, for a moment thinking about the doctor's words. Then he looked around at his alien colleagues, beings from different worlds who had become his friends and teammates. My grandfather used to tell me that some things are worth the risk. Saving the lives of good people is definitely worth the risk. Zixara's skin shifted to warm golden colors, which Jake had learned meant deep emotional feeling among her people. Why do humans always seem willing to sacrifice themselves for others? Most species prioritize individual survival above group. Survival. I guess it's because we learned early that we're stronger together than apart, Jake replied. Earth is a dangerous place. Humans survive by taking care of each other, even when it meant personal risk. It's just part of who we are. Kashinda looked up from her work, her large eyes reflecting curiosity. Tell us more about human history. How did your people develop this attitude? As they continued working on the suit modifications, Jake shared stories about human cooperation and sacrifice. He told them about firefighters who ran into burning buildings to save strangers, about doctors who worked in plague zones to help the sick, and about engineers who stayed at their posts during disasters. To save others? During the Great Flood of 1927 in my country, Jake said thousands of people were trapped by rising water. Volunteers used boats and rafts to rescue them, working for days without rest. Many of the rescuers were ordinary people, farmers, shopkeepers, mechanics, who just saw that help was needed. The alien crew listened with growing amazement. On most worlds, such self-sacrifice was rare and usually performed only by specially trained professionals. The idea that ordinary humans regularly risked their lives for others was both inspiring and puzzling to them. Your species is very unusual, Zixara observed. Most intelligent life forms develop strong individual survival instincts. Sacrificing personal safety for others goes against basic evolutionary principles. Maybe, Jake said, but it's also what made us successful. When humans work together, we can accomplish things that seem impossible. The work continued for several hours. Kashinda carefully installed additional shielding layers, her precise movements ensuring that every component fit perfectly. Zixara optimized the suit's power systems, using her energy sense to eliminate weak points and improve protection efficiency. Jake helped where he could, but mostly he watched and learned from his talented colleagues. The modified suit was beginning to look very different from its original design. Additional armor plating covered the torso and helmet, while reinforced power cables provided extra energy for the enhanced shielding systems. The arms and legs remained more lightly protected, a calculated risk to save weight and maintain mobility. Additional mass is significant, Nixola noted, checking the suit's specifications. You'll be carrying almost twice the normal weight. Will you be able to work effectively? Jake tested the suit's mobility, moving his arms and legs to simulate the repair procedures. It's heavy, but manageable. Human muscles are adapted for working in Earth's gravity, which is stronger than most inhabited worlds. It's the extra weight. Shouldn't be a problem. Dr. Hexandra began preparing the medical treatments, carefully measuring doses based on Jake's body weight and metabolism. These injections should be given just before you begin the spacewalk. The effects will last approximately 1 hour, which should be enough time for the repair. What exactly will they do? Cellular regeneration booster will speed up your body's natural healing processes. The DNA repair accelerator will help your cells fix radiation damage as it occurs. Think of them as giving your natural abilities a temporary enhancement. Jake nodded, feeling both nervous and excited about the coming mission. How much time do we have left? Captain Velmuth's voice came over the communication system. Engineering. Team, please report to the bridge for final mission briefing. We need to begin the repair attempt within the next 2 hours. As they gathered their equipment and prepared to leave the fabrication bay, Jake took a moment to thank his colleagues. I want you all to know how much I appreciate your help. You're risking your careers and maybe your lives to help me attempt something that most people would call crazy. Zixara placed a gentle hand on Jake's shoulder. Her crystalline skin warmed to the touch. Jake, you're risking your life to save all of us. Helping you prepare is the least we can do. Keshinda nodded agreement, her small voice filled with determination. Besides, working with human engineering methods has taught me new ways to solve problems. Your people's approach to calculated risk-taking is something my species needs to learn. And I've learned that sometimes the impossible is just another word for hasn't been tried yet, Zixara added. That's a very human way of thinking, and I find it ... inspiring. As they walked toward the bridge, Jake felt a surge of confidence. He was still afraid any sane person would be afraid of what he was about to attempt. But he was no longer facing the challenge alone. His alien friends had given him not just better equipment and medical support. It's something even more valuable, the knowledge that they believed in him and in the human spirit of never giving up. The modified suit felt heavier with each step, but Jake's heart felt lighter. In a few hours, he would step outside the ship into one of the most dangerous environments in the known universe. But he would do it with the best preparation possible and the support of friends who had come to understand what it meant to be human. Jake Morrison stood in the airlock chamber, wearing his heavily modified environmental suit. The additional shielding made him look like a mechanical warrior from an ancient Earth legend. But he felt the weight of responsibility more than the weight of the armor. Through the small window, he could see the neutron star spinning in the distance, its surface crackling with energy that could kill him in seconds. Dr. Hexandra had given him the medical injections 20 minutes ago. Jake could already feel the effects. His heart was beating faster, and he felt more alert than usual. The cellular regeneration booster was flowing through his bloodstream, preparing his body to fight the radiation damage that was about to come. Final systems check, came Zixara's voice through his helmet communicator. She was monitoring his suit from the engineering station, using her energy sense to watch every power flow and shield generator. All protective systems are operating at maximum efficiency. Communications are clear, reported Kashinda from her station. I'm tracking all your vital signs. Your heart rate is elevated, but within acceptable ranges for the medical treatment. Jake checked his toolkit one more time. Everything was secured and ready for the repair work. The replacement power coupling units were attached to his belt, and the crystal alignment tools were stored in easy-reach pockets. He had practiced the repair procedure dozens of times in the ship's simulator, but actually doing it while exposed to deadly radiation would be very different. Jake, you don't have to do this, came Captain Velmuth's voice from the bridge. Even now, the captain was giving him one last chance to change his mind. Could still try the evacuation pods. Captain, we both know the math on that option. Jake replied calmly. This is our best chance. I'm ready.
How?
The airlock began its cycle, removing all the air and preparing to open to space. Jake felt his suit's life support systems take over completely, providing him with oxygen and maintaining comfortable temperature. The modified shielding hummed quietly as the generators powered up to full strength. Airlock opening in 10 seconds, announced the ship's computer. EVA procedures are now in effect. Jake took a deep breath of recycled air and stepped out into space. The view was both beautiful and terrifying. The neutron star dominated the sky, its surface covered with storms of plasma and energy that created an incredible light show. But Jake knew that the same energy creating those pretty lights would kill him if his suit failed. "I'm outside," he reported, using his suit's small thrusters to move toward the damaged deflector array, beginning approach to the worksite. From her station, Zixara watched the energy readings from Jake's suit. Her people could sense electromagnetic fields naturally. She could actually perceive the radiation field around the neutron star as a visible phenomenon. What she saw made her skin turn deep blue with worry. Jake was flying directly into a storm of deadly energy that looked like a wall of fire to her enhanced senses. "Jake, the radiation levels are even higher than we calculated," she warned. "Your suit is already working at 80% capacity just from ambient exposure." "Understood," Jake replied, his voice steady. "How much time do I have before the shielding fails?" Kashinda ran quick calculations on her computer. "At current exposure levels, your suit should provide protection for approximately 55 minutes. But those levels will increase significantly when you reach the deflector array." Jake reached the damaged equipment and began his examination. The deflector array was a complex piece of technology that looked like a giant flower made of metal and crystal. Several of the crystal petals were cracked or misaligned, and he could see burn damage on the power coupling units where the radiation burst had overloaded the system. "Visual inspection complete," he reported. "The damage is exactly what we expected." Beginning repair sequence. Jake pulled out his first tool and started working on the primary focusing crystal. The repair required delicate precision. The crystal had to be positioned within fractions of a millimeter to focus the deflector field properly. His human hands, steady from years of mechanical work, moved carefully despite the heavy gloves. Of his modified suit, radiation exposure increasing, Dr. Hexandra reported from the medical station. Cellular damage indicators are rising, but the regeneration booster appears to be working. Your body is repairing damage almost as fast. As it's occurring, Jake continued working, realigning the crystal and securing it with specialized clamps. The neutron star's radiation was invisible to human eyes, but he could feel its effects as a slight tingling sensation that grew stronger with each passing minute. His modified suit protected him from immediate death, but he knew the radiation was still getting through. "First crystal alignment complete," Jake announced, moving to the second focusing assembly. Zixara monitored the energy flows through the partially repaired array. "Good work, Jake. I can see the field harmonics improving." "Already, but your suit's shielding is now down to 60% efficiency." The second crystal was more severely damaged, requiring Jake to actually replace it with a spare component. This was more difficult work, requiring him to disconnect power cables and remove the broken crystal before installing the new one. His movements were becoming slightly slower as the radiation began to affect his nervous system despite the medical treatments. "How are you feeling, Jake?" asked Dr. Hexandra, monitoring his vital signs carefully. "A little tired, but okay," Jake replied honestly. He was actually starting to feel weak and dizzy, but he didn't want to worry his friends. The radiation was definitely getting through his defenses, but the cellular regeneration booster was helping his body cope with the damage. 20-5 minutes into the repair, Jake encountered his first major problem. One of the power coupling units was more severely damaged than expected, with internal components fused together by the radiation burst. The standard replacement procedure wouldn't work. He needed to improvise a solution. Reported, examining the damaged coupling. "The internal matrix is completely fused. I can't just swap out the unit." Kashinda quickly accessed the technical databases. "Doc, Jake, there's no standard procedure for that type of damage. The manual says to replace the entire deflector assembly, which would take hours." Jake studied the problem, his human mind working through possible solutions. This was exactly the kind of challenge that separated human engineering from alien approaches, the willingness to try something that wasn't in the instruction manual. "I'm going to try building a bypass," Jake announced. "If I can route the power flow around the damaged sections using spare cable and a modified connector, it should work." That's not a standard procedure, Nick Solon warned from his engineering station. There's no guarantee a bypass will handle the power levels safely. Sometimes you have to make the procedure up as you go, Jake replied, already pulling spare components from his toolkit. Human engineering rule number 1, if it works, it's not stupid. Jake began constructing his improvised bypass, using spare power cables to route energy around the damaged coupling. His hands moved with practiced skill, even though they were beginning to shake slightly from radiation exposure. The work required him to expose delicate components to the neutron star's energy field, but there was no other choice. 35 minutes elapsed, reported Kashinda. Your radiation exposure is approaching dangerous levels, even with the medical treatments. Almost done with the bypass, Jake said, making the final connections. Testing power flow now. Zixara watched her energy sensors as Jake activated the improvised system. It's working. Power is flowing through your bypass at 92% efficiency. That's actually better than some standard couplings. Jake allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before moving to the final repair task. One more coupling to replace, then we can test the whole system. The last power coupling was damaged but not fused, making it a straightforward replacement job. However, Jake's hands were now shaking noticeably from radiation exposure, and he had to work more carefully to avoid dropping tools or making mistakes. 42 minutes elapsed, Dr. Hexandra announced, her voice tense with concern. Your cellular damage levels are becoming critical. You need to return to the ship immediately after completing this repair. Almost finished, Jake promised, securing the final coupling in place. Testing the complete array now. He activated the deflector array's startup sequence and watched as the system came to life. The focusing crystals began to glow with contained energy, and the field generators hummed with power. After a few seconds, a protective bubble of force surrounded the ship, shielding them from the neutron star's deadly radiation. Success, shouted Zixara, her crystalline skin now glowing bright gold with joy. The deflector array is fully operational. Radiation levels inside the ship are dropping to safe levels. Jake felt a wave of relief and exhaustion wash over him. The mission was complete, but now he had to get back to the ship before the radiation exposure overwhelmed his body's ability to heal itself. Jake Morrison pushed himself away from the repaired deflector array, using his suit's small thrusters to begin the journey back to the ship. His hands were shaking badly now, and he could feel weakness spreading through his entire body. The radiation exposure was finally overwhelming, even his enhanced human resistance, and the medical treatments that
Dr. Hexandra had given him. Jake, your vital signs are showing severe stress,
came the doctor's worried voice through his helmet communicator. Your heart rate is irregular, and I'm detecting significant cellular damage throughout your body. I can make it back, Jake said, though his voice sounded weaker than before. The distance to the airlock looked much farther than it had 45 minutes ago when he started his spacewalk. His vision was starting to blur slightly. He had to concentrate hard to control his suit's movement system. Zixara watched Jake's slow progress from her engineering station. Her crystalline skin shifting between worried orange and fearful blue colors. Jake, the deflector array is working perfectly. The radiation levels inside the ship have returned to normal. You did it. We did it, Jake corrected, managing a tired smile despite his condition. Couldn't have done this without all of you. Captain? Velmuth stood on the bridge, watching the main screen that showed Jake's suit moving slowly through space. The young human engineer had just accomplished something that every other species in the galaxy would have considered impossible. Medical team, prepare the sickbay for immediate treatment. Engineering team, assist with emergency docking procedures. Kashinda monitored Jake's suit systems with growing concern. Jake, your life support is functioning normally, but your suit's radiation shielding is now completely depleted. If you don't reach the airlock within the next 5 minutes, even the ambient radiation will become dangerous. Jake tried to move faster, but his coordination was failing. The radiation had damaged his nervous system enough to affect his motor control. He bumped into the ship's hull and had to use his hands to guide himself along the surface toward the airlock. Each movement required tremendous effort. Almost there, he whispered, more to himself than to his colleagues listening on. The communication channel, Dr. Hexandra, was already waiting in the medical bay with emergency equipment. She had studied human physiology extensively during the mission preparation. But Jake would be the first human she had ever treated for severe radiation exposure. Preparing cellular reconstruction therapy and advanced DNA repair treatments, I'll need to start treatment the moment he's back inside. The airlock door finally came into view, and Jake felt a surge of relief. He activated the emergency entry sequence, and the outer door began to open. But as he tried to pull himself inside, his weakened muscles couldn't support the weight of his modified suit. He floated helplessly, just outside the airlock, too exhausted to complete the final few feet of his journey. "I can't make it inside," Jake admitted, his voice barely audible. Without hesitation, Zixara left her station and ran toward the airlock. "I'm going to help him," she announced. "Yes, Sarah." "No," called Captain Velmuth. "The radiation levels are still dangerous for your species." "The deflector array is working," she replied, already putting on an emergency suit. "The radiation is reduced enough that I can survive a few minutes outside. Jake risked his life for all of us. I'm not going to let him die just outside our door." Kashinda also headed for the emergency equipment. "I'm coming too. My people may be cautious, but we're not cowards." Within 3 minutes, both alien females were suited up and entering the airlock. They moved quickly but carefully, grabbing Jake under his arms and pulling him inside the ship. The moment the inner airlock door sealed, Dr. Hexandra and her medical team rushed forward. "Get him to medical bay immediately," the doctor ordered. "We need to remove that suit and begin treatment." Jake was conscious but weak as they carried him through the ship's corridors. He could see his alien colleagues looking at him with expressions of concern and admiration. Even crew members he barely knew had come to watch, and he could see respect. In their eyes, in the medical bay, Dr. Hexandra worked quickly to remove Jake's damaged suit and begin treatment. The radiation exposure had been severe, but the cellular regeneration booster had prevented immediate death. His body was already beginning to repair the damage, though he would need weeks of medical treatment to fully recover. "How bad is it, Doctor?" asked Captain Velmuth, who had come to check on his engineer. "Severe radiation exposure, but not fatal," Dr. Hexandra replied, monitoring Jake's vital signs. "The human cellular repair mechanisms are remarkable. Combined with our medical treatments, he should make a full recovery, though it will take time." Jake opened his eyes and looked around at his friends gathered in the medical bay. "Did the deflector array hold? Can we get home?" "The array is working perfectly," Zixara assured him, her skin now glowing with warm golden colors. "We're already moving away from the neutron star. We'll be back in safe space within hours." Captain Velmuth stepped forward. "Engineer Morrison, I'm officially commending you for exceptional service. Your actions saved the lives of everyone aboard this ship." "Just doing my job, Captain," Jake said weakly, though I admit it was a little more exciting than my usual. "Repair work." Kashinda leaned closer to Jake's medical bed. "Jake, I need to tell you something. Working with you has changed how I think about engineering. My people always follow exact procedures and safety protocols. But watching you improvise solutions and take calculated risks has taught me that sometimes the best answer isn't in the technical manuals." Zixara nodded agreement. "Your willingness to sacrifice for others is something my species finds difficult to understand, but impossible not to admire. You've shown us what it truly means to be part of a crew." Over the following days, as Jake recovered from his radiation exposure, word of his actions spread throughout the ship and beyond. The story of the human engineer who repaired a deflector array in a neutron, a star's radiation field, became legend among the crew members. Dr. Hexandra spent hours studying Jake's medical data, fascinated by human biology's ability to survive and recover from radiation damage. "Your species continues to amaze me," she told Jake during one of his treatment sessions. "The Galactic Medical Council will want to study these results. You may have just advanced radiation medicine for all species." Captain Velmuth visited Jake regularly during his recovery. "I've been in command of ships for 40 years, the captain said one day. "I've served with crew members from dozens of different species. But I've never seen courage and ingenuity like what you displayed out there. Other humans would have done the same thing. Jake replied honestly. When someone needs help, you help them. That's just how we are. 3 weeks later, Jake was fully recovered and back on duty. The Stellar Dawn had completed its mission and was returning to the main shipping lanes, where they would transfer to different assignments. As the crew prepared to separate, Jake realized how much this experience had changed all of them. Zixara approached him with official transfer documents. "I've requested assignment to Earth's Engineering Academy," she announced. "Human engineering methods and learn how to incorporate calculated risk-taking into my work." Kashinda also had news. "My government has asked me to establish an exchange program between our species and Earth. They want Nixian engineers to learn human improvisation techniques." Jake felt honored but also slightly overwhelmed. "I'm just a mechanic from Colorado. I fix things when they break," said Zixara, her skin glowing with deep respect. "You're a Deathworlder engineer. You see solutions where others see only problems. You take risks to help others. That's something the galaxy needs more of." Captain Velmoth made the final announcement. "Engineer Morrison, you've been selected for assignment to the deep space exploration vessel Pioneer's Edge. They specifically requested a human engineer for their mission to uncharted systems." Jake accepted the assignment gladly. Space exploration was dangerous work, full of unknown challenges and unexpected problems. It was exactly the kind of job that needed someone who could think creatively and take calculated risks when necessary. As the Stellar Dawn docked at the orbital station where the crew would transfer to new assignments, Jake looked back on his time with the mixed species research team. He had learned that the galaxy was full of intelligent, capable beings from different worlds with different strengths and perspectives. But he had also learned that humans brought something unique to galactic civilization: the willingness to risk everything to help others, and the ability to find solutions when all hope seemed lost. These were gifts that came from growing up on a dangerous world where survival required cooperation, creativity, and courage. Jake Morrison, the engineer from Colorado, had become a legend among the stars. But more importantly, he had helped bridge the gap between humans and aliens, showing that different species could work together to accomplish the impossible. As he prepared for his next adventure in deep space, Jake knew that the galaxy was a little safer and a little more hopeful because humans had joined the cosmic community.